I mean, I was incredibly flattered. It was very cool. It was a little embarrassing at times. You know, I'm in carpool with the kids and the song comes on and my son's like...
Hollywood once had an actress known as the Silent Monument, breathtakingly beautiful, hypnotic in her performances, yet never one to chase fame. That woman was Michelle Pfeiffer, a woman with a golden ratio face, once commanding salaries on par with A-list actors who once licked Batman's face on screen, and once got dropped from a film simply because she was an ex of her co-star. She had no scandals, no flashy persona, no noisy red carpets, and yet she was the one who made all of Hollywood stop and take a closer look. How did an actress once dismissed as just a pretty face become the legendary Catwoman? Why, in an era when stars fight for every second of screen time, did Michelle choose to step away, become a single mother, and then return with authority at age 60 in the Marvel Universe? And is it true that behind the silence stretching across decades lies an unspoken crack, while her husband, producer David E. Kelley, consistently collaborates closely with Nicole Kidman on high-profile TV projects, Michelle remains entirely on the sidelines? So, in the end, what was it that kept Michelle Pfeiffer from collapsing, lashing out, or walking away, instead choosing to stand firm in silence, quietly proving her worth, step by step? And could it be that very silence is hiding something Hollywood would rather not talk about? Stay tuned. The next parts will take you into untold corners, silent falls, and the choices that have made Michelle Pfeiffer one of the most mysterious and most respected actresses in modern cinema. Michelle Pfeiffer was born on April 29, 1958, in Santa Ana, California, into an ordinary working-class family. Her father, Dick Pfeiffer, worked as an air conditioning technician. Her mother, Donna, was a traditional homemaker. Michelle was the second of 4 siblings, her older brother Rick, and 2 younger sisters, Dee Dee and Lori. Both Dee Dee and Lori would later dabble in modeling and acting, but neither pursued it to the end like their older sister. The Pfeiffer family had a diverse ancestry: German, English, Swiss, Swedish, and Italian. When Michelle was still a child, the family moved to Midway City, a small community in Orange County, Southern California. This quiet suburban neighborhood, not far from downtown Los Angeles, shaped Michelle into a quiet girl who preferred observing over speaking. She once described herself as unremarkable at school, often feeling out of place and not fitting into any group, a persistent sense of detachment that followed her into adulthood and incidentally became an asset in her acting. Michelle attended Fountain Valley High School and graduated in 1976. She then enrolled at Golden West College with plans to become a court reporter, a safe and stable career path. At the time, the arts had never crossed her mind. Her biggest dream was simply to have a secure job, something steady and not too noisy. To cover living expenses, Michelle worked part-time at Vons, a major supermarket chain in Southern California. The monotonous cashier job, seemingly just a chapter of student life, unexpectedly became a quiet turning point. It was there, during long shifts and interactions with all kinds of people, that Michelle began to feel drawn to the world of expressions, communication, and human emotions, elements that resonated with her far more than any classroom subject. She later shared that observing customers helped her develop a sense of character, a foundation for the deep performances she would be known for later on. In 1978, she entered the Miss Orange County beauty pageant. No one expected such a quiet girl like Michelle to walk on stage with such natural grace. Not only did she win the local round, but she also made it to the top 6 in the Miss California pageant. For Michelle, this wasn't just a title. It was the first door that opened onto a completely new path. From a law student and part-time cashier, she officially stepped into the world of entertainment, bringing with her both shyness and a burning desire to prove herself. That turning point didn't just change Michelle Pfeiffer's career. It defined how she would approach life from then on, not coming from any prestigious acting school, not connected in the industry, but always carrying one unmistakable quality: an artistic instinct and a quiet inner force waiting to ignite. Michelle didn't start as someone Hollywood embraced, but that humble beginning made her never forget who she was, even when she rose to A-list stardom. After gaining attention at the Miss California pageant, Michelle Pfeiffer quickly found representation and began landing small roles on television. In the late 1970s, American TV was filled with light-hearted popular series, and Michelle appeared in shows like Fantasy Island, Chips, Delta House, and a few others. These roles were brief and lacked depth, but they were enough for audiences to notice a new, appealing face, bright eyes, blonde hair, and a distinct presence. In 1980, she had her first film role in the teen comedy The Hollywood Knights, starring opposite Tony Danza. The film wasn't a major success, but it paved the way for Pfeiffer to land her first leading role 2 years later. Grease 2, 1982, was expected to continue the massive success of the original, a cultural phenomenon that had catapulted Olivia Newton-John to global fame. Michelle Pfeiffer was cast as the lead, Stephanie Zenone, a spunky, alluring, strong-willed leader of the Pink Ladies. Ironically, Michelle herself had no expectations for the role. In an interview with Entertainment Weekly, she recalled that her agent brought her to the audition just to gain more experience. It was a crowded casting call where actors, dancers, and singers could all hear each other's lines and songs. Michelle wasn't a singer, let alone a dancer. She once said the dance audition made her feel utterly humiliated, and she had planned to quietly leave. But to her surprise, an assistant director chased after her and said, "Director Pat Birch wanted her to return the next day." A few days later, she was officially offered the lead role. However, with the towering expectations set by its predecessor, Grease 2 flopped upon release. It grossed only about $15 million, a dismal return compared to the original's global haul of over $400 million. Critically, the film was a total failure. On Rotten Tomatoes, it holds a score of just 36%. Roger Ebert called it a spiritless, energyless copy, lacking even a real star. Michelle Pfeiffer's performance didn't win praise either. Critics described her as shallow, lacking depth, and reliant solely on her looks. She later admitted, "I didn't know how to act back then. I was learning on set." Pfeiffer also expressed discomfort with the exaggerated media hype surrounding the film. The marketing campaign was heavily focused on her and co-star Maxwell Caulfield, two virtually unknown faces at the time. One tagline even read, "Too hot to handle." Pfeiffer, upon seeing it, simply thought, "Oh God, how embarrassing. What if people don't think I'm hot?" The overwhelming pressure made her fear she would ruin a beloved American franchise. Years later, when some articles quoted her as saying she hated Grease 2 and called it unbelievably bad, Michelle had to clarify on Instagram that those quotes were taken out of context. On the contrary, she stated clearly, "That movie has always been very special to me and my journey." In a 2023 interview with Entertainment Weekly, she admitted the film was a lot of fun, made for a very specific audience, and added, "It's surprising how many fans it has, but that's great. Maybe everything you put out there eventually circles back." Pfeiffer also revealed that to this day, she still keeps a few mementos from the film: the pink lady jacket, a bowling ball, and a bowling bag, as a way to remember a rocky yet meaningful beginning. In the early phase of her career, Michelle Pfeiffer wasn't seen as a serious actress. She was typecast in bimbo roles, a term used for pretty, naive, or shallow female characters who merely decorate the screen. Her striking appearance unintentionally became a barrier. She was so beautiful that people questioned whether there was anything truly substantial behind that beauty. With no professional acting background, no industry connections, and a pageant girl label, Michelle Pfeiffer's start was anything but smooth. But that period of being underestimated quietly forged her resilience. She didn't reject small roles, didn't give up under criticism, and silently learned how to survive in an industry that rarely forgives those who are just pretty. After Grease 2, Michelle took a few steps back to prepare for a much longer leap forward. If Grease 2 was Michelle Pfeiffer's first door into Hollywood, then Scarface was the moment she stepped into the grand room and stayed. In 1983, director Brian De Palma and screenwriter Oliver Stone were looking for a face that was both icy and quintessentially American to play Elvira Hancock, the second wife of drug lord Tony Montana, played by Al Pacino. Michelle Pfeiffer, with her golden hair and sharp aura, caught the eye of producer Martin Bregman. But when her name came up, Brian De Palma flatly rejected her. The reason? He had seen Grease 2, and like many in the industry at the time, he believed Pfeiffer was just another bankable pretty face lacking depth, unfit for a psychologically heavy role in a dark, violent, and hypnotic film like Scarface. But Bregman thought differently. He believed there was untapped potential behind that exterior, and he fought for it. After several rounds of intense negotiations, Michelle was granted a screen test, and that audition shattered every prejudice. She didn't just capture Elvira's haughty, distant, and venomous demeanor. She infused the character with a depth few anticipated. When Scarface hit theaters, the film stirred major controversy for its violence, profanity, and bleak portrayal of the criminal world. With a budget of around $25 million, it grossed $66 million worldwide, $45 million from North America alone. Still, Scarface didn't fade into obscurity as many had predicted. On the contrary, it outlived most of its contemporaries. On Rotten Tomatoes, Scarface now holds an 81% critic score and a 93% audience score. Legendary critic Roger Ebert gave it a full 4-star rating and included it in his list of great movies. Eventually, the American Film Institute, AFI, ranked it number 10 among the greatest gangster films of all time. And amid that heavy canvas of drugs, power, and violence, Michelle Pfeiffer, with her gaunt frame, icy stare, and vacant gaze, emerged as a haunting anchor. Elvira Hancock wasn't a loud character, but she embodied the dark flip side of glory, a woman consumed by the very world she once thought glamorous. Michelle Pfeiffer didn't just make audiences remember her name, she made Hollywood take a second look. No longer the blonde bimbo from Grease 2, she entered the ranks of the most promising faces of a new generation. After Scarface, Michelle Pfeiffer didn't become an overnight superstar. But one thing was certain, she was no decorative flower on screen. Instead of chasing romantic leads or the classic box office beauty roles Hollywood readily handed out, Pfeiffer chose the harder path. She wanted to prove herself a real actress, not a fleeting icon. In 1987, she appeared in The Witches of Eastwick alongside Jack Nicholson, Cher, and Susan Sarandon. Though the film had a humorous, supernatural tone, the production was anything but light. Director George Miller walked off set twice, and the producer had a reputation for explosive behavior. Amid the chaos, Pfeiffer and her female co-stars found emotional balance by regularly gathering in Jack Nicholson's trailer, sharing lunch and conversation like genuine friends. That friendship and solidarity helped them survive a turbulent set, and on screen, Pfeiffer radiated with a smart, effortless charm, as if she were born to play the subtly layered modern woman. But her first major breakthrough came the following year when she played Angela DeMarco, a mafia widow trying to escape the criminal underworld in Married to the Mob, 1988. It was the first time Pfeiffer carried a film entirely on her own, without the anchor of a major male star. Director Jonathan Demme created a respectful, creative environment, something Pfeiffer later said helped her break free from her own career insecurities. With her messy curls, thick Brooklyn accent, and eyes yearning for freedom, she turned Angela into a lovable, defiant character with surprising depth, earning her first Golden Globe nomination. That same year, she ventured into an entirely different territory, dangerous liaisons. Set among the scheming and lust-driven French aristocracy of the 18th century, Pfeiffer portrayed Madame de Tourvel, a virtuous woman drawn into a cruel game of seduction and betrayal. With period costumes, formal language, and intricate dialogue, the role demanded surgical precision. But Pfeiffer held her ground. Among acting giants like Glenn Close and John Malkovich, she maintained a measured grace, crafting a character full of pain and vulnerability without ever losing dignity. The performance earned her a BAFTA win, an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress, and widespread acclaim as one of her most delicate transformations. Then came The Fabulous Baker Boys, 1989, where Michelle Pfeiffer was no longer seen as full of potential, but rather as the defining force of the film. She played Susie Diamond, a lounge singer and former escort who enters the lives of two struggling musician brothers. The role demanded real singing, nuanced acting, and something few actresses possess: the ability to command a space with sheer presence. Pfeiffer spent months training her voice, studying jazz divas like Billie Holiday and Sarah Vaughan to prepare. The result? Her performance of Makin' Whoopee while sprawled atop a grand piano went down in film history. A single take, just a woman singing, yet it conveyed everything: sensuality, loneliness, yearning, and a lingering sadness. Many critics likened her image to Rita Hayworth in Gilda or Marilyn Monroe in Some Like It Hot, irreplaceable icons. With the role of Susie Diamond, Pfeiffer won the Golden Globe for Best Actress and received her first Academy Award nomination for Best Actress. There were no doubts left. She had reached the top by virtue of pure talent and quiet dedication. Entering the 1990s, Michelle Pfeiffer was no longer someone trying to prove her ability. She had done that. And now, Hollywood was willing to pay heavily to keep her. In 1990, Pfeiffer played Katya Orlova, a Russian editor in the Russia House, opposite Sean Connery. It was the first American film shot in the Soviet Union after the Cold War, and to prepare for the role, Michelle spent significant time learning Russian and perfecting the accent. Director Fred Shepisi said she had a mockingbird's ability to mimic, and was always proactive in seeking support to refine her performance. That sharp instinct gave Katya real depth and earned Pfeiffer yet another Golden Globe nomination, kicking off 6 consecutive years of award recognition. In 1991, Michelle reunited with Al Pacino in Frankie and Johnny. The role of Frankie had been played by Kathy Bates on stage, and Bates herself was eager to reprise it in the film. But the producers chose Pfeiffer, a decision that stirred controversy, with some claiming she was too beautiful to portray a lonely, closed-off waitress. Yet Michelle silenced all doubt with a performance so tender it was heartbreaking. She turned Frankie into a woman vulnerable yet quietly strong, and earned another Golden Globe nod, this time without any debate. Then came 1992, a pivotal year. Pfeiffer simultaneously took on 2 vastly different roles, and both pushed her to new heights. In Love Field, she became Lurene Hallett, a white Southern woman whose conservative appearance masked a yearning for change. She traveled with a black man and his daughter following President Kennedy's assassination, a journey that forced her to confront the realities of her world. The film was delayed due to Orion Pictures' bankruptcy, but upon release, her performance resonated with audiences and critics alike. Pfeiffer won the Silver Bear at the Berlin Film Festival and received her 3rd Academy Award nomination for Best Actress. That same year, she slipped into the black latex suit, trained with a whip, and became Catwoman in Batman Returns. Originally, the role had gone to Annette Bening, who withdrew due to pregnancy. Pfeiffer stepped in with just weeks to prepare, but her commitment stunned everyone. The vacuum-sealed Catwoman suit could only be worn for short periods and made her prone to fainting. During training, she accidentally struck her whip instructor, but he didn't quit, and they continued until she mastered it. Her iconic moment licking Batman's face, lasted only seconds but became a symbol of sex and power in cinema. Premiere magazine called her the greatest Catwoman of all time. And audiences couldn't look away. A creature both feral, tormented, and terrifying. 3 years later, Michelle came back down to earth, literally, in Dangerous Minds, 1995. She played Luann Johnson, a former Marine turned inner-city schoolteacher. Her story and her rebellious students, set to the backdrop of gangsta's paradise, created one of the most powerful depictions of a teacher in pop culture. Few knew she was pregnant during filming. To hide her belly, she wore oversized sweaters, carefully selected camera angles, and used props to distract the eye. A subplot involving a romance with a male teacher, played by Andy Garcia, was cut from the final version to preserve the film's central message about education and transformation. Soon after, Michelle Pfeiffer officially joined the $12 Million Club, a rare group of actresses earning salaries on par with A-list male stars. Alongside Jodie Foster and Meg Ryan, she became one of the first 3 women to hit that milestone in the late 1990s, a benchmark that was not just personal, but reflective of a shift in Hollywood's power dynamics. What's striking is that Pfeiffer wasn't an action hero or a typical box office magnet. She chose psychological, artistic roles, the kind usually undervalued commercially. Yet her professional reputation and emotional depth forced Hollywood to admit, true talent has value. Her $12 million paycheck for The Deep End of the Ocean, 1999, was clear proof. She didn't need to chase trends. She reached the top on her own terms. What do you think? When an actress known for art films earns as much as action stars, is it pure class or just perfect timing? Ending the 1990s with The Deep End of the Ocean, Michelle Pfeiffer stepped into the new millennium with roles that grew increasingly edgy. From A Broken Wife, The Story of Us, A Haunted Woman, What Lies Beneath, a defiant lawyer, I Am Sam, to an overbearing mother, White Oleander, Pfeiffer showed that the true peak of an artist doesn't lie in box office numbers, but in resilience and constant reinvention. And if one had to draw a definitive line under her golden era, it would be the moment people stopped calling her a beautiful actress and started calling her a formidable artist. But peaks never last forever. After 2002, Michelle Pfeiffer began to step away from major projects by choice. She dissolved her production company, Via Rosa Productions, turned down numerous big scripts, and dedicated herself fully to her family, especially as her 2 children were entering adolescence. During this period, Pfeiffer only occasionally accepted roles in smaller, limited-release films like I Could Never Be Your Woman or Personal Effects, and virtually disappeared from red carpets altogether. Then, in 2007, she made a spectacular return. Not in romantic leads or art films, but with 2 surprising villainous roles. Velma Von Tussle in Hairspray and Lamia in Stardust. One was a racist, ambitious, domineering woman, the other, an ancient witch hunting for the heart of a fallen star to reclaim her youth. 2 seemingly unrelated characters, yet both were delivered by Pfeiffer with a mesmerizing sharpness that made it impossible to look away. Hairspray became a massive hit, grossing $203.5 million worldwide against a $75 million budget. It scored 92% on Rotten Tomatoes and 81 on Metacritic. Impressive numbers for a musical adaptation. Critics called Pfeiffer sublime, elegant, unique, and irreplaceable. Meanwhile, Stardust, though not a box office juggernaut, $137 million globally on a budget of around $88.5 million, was also positively received with a 77% Rotten Tomatoes score. Once again, Pfeiffer stood out as the film's brightest star, bringing to Lamia not just menace, but emotional depth and deadly allure. In short, these 2 roles not only marked Michelle Pfeiffer's comeback after years of retreat, they reminded Hollywood that beauty may fade, but acting prowess does not. And with Pfeiffer, the light she brings to the screen never truly goes out. Behind the successful roles, the multi-million-dollar films, and the spotlight, there was another Michelle Pfeiffer, quiet, reserved, and determined to keep her private life out of the media's reach. Her first marriage began as a tender romance between two young artists chasing their dreams. In 1981, at just 22 years old, Michelle Pfeiffer married actor-director Peter Horton, who would later become known for his role in the TV series 30-something. They met in an acting class in Los Angeles and quickly became a couple, both on and off the screen, appearing together in projects like One Too Many, 1985, and Amazon Women on the Moon, 1987. But that companionship didn't last. In a 2012 interview with Interview magazine, Michelle reflected on that marriage with honesty. "I was 22. I think that was too young. I think both my husband and I were too young, and as we started to grow up, our needs changed. There were no fights, no scandals. They parted like old friends, still caring, just no longer walking the same path. We were always very close, even when we split. It was hard for both of us because we never stopped caring about each other. We didn't have some dramatic, angry breakup. He even helped me pack my stuff into the car. No bitterness, and we talked on the phone every day." For Pfeiffer, that first marriage was a lesson. Loving someone is one thing, growing together is another journey altogether. And as the spotlight of Hollywood grew brighter and more intrusive, she began to understand balancing a career and a personal life was never going to be easy. It was one of Hollywood's rare separations. No public tears, just two grown-ups, respectful enough to leave with grace. After parting ways with Peter Horton, Michelle entered a new relationship with actor and producer Fisher Stevens. They met in 1989 during a Shakespeare play in New York. Michelle played Olivia, and Fisher played Sir Andrew Agcheek. What began as a professional pairing quickly blossomed into a quiet love. The relationship lasted 3 years, gentle, private, and very much in Pfeiffer's style. No red carpets, no power couple status. They lived simply, away from the cameras, occasionally mentioned in backstage articles. But once again, as they grew in different directions, they chose to part ways without hurting each other. After that relationship, she began thinking about having children, without waiting for someone else. "I had thought about finding a man just to be the father, no strings, no marriage," she once shared in an interview. But then she made her decision. She could be a mother, on her own, and be happy. That decision wasn't just a turning point in her personal life. It was a quiet declaration. Michelle Pfeiffer didn't need to wait for anyone to start what she truly wanted. And just like her approach to choosing roles, independent, unpredictable, and outside the mold, she stepped into single motherhood with quiet conviction and belief in herself. In early 1993, she began the process of adopting a child, a major decision that was entirely her own. Without complicating things with love or marriage, Michelle simply wanted to become a mother. Around that time, a mutual friend arranged a blind date. No fancy restaurant, no expensive champagne. They went bowling. The man that evening was David E. Kelley, an Emmy-winning screenwriter and producer. At first, Michelle even thought about setting him up with her sister Didi. But the friend stopped her, looked her in the eye, and said, "Don't you dare! I'm sitting across from your future husband." That's how their love story began. Simple, unexpected, and far from the Hollywood template. At the time, Michelle was still in the process of adopting Claudia Rose. And just 2 months after that first date, the child arrived. "We had a child almost immediately, and most couples don't go through that," she later shared. "But because of that, I got to see David in a situation that would definitely separate the boys from the men. He didn't hesitate. He rose to it." 10 months after that first date, they got married on November 13th, 1993. That same day, Claudia was baptized, and David officially became her legal father. Nearly a year later, they welcomed a biological son, John Henry Kelly. But what stands out isn't the sequence of events, it's how they lived afterward. Michelle admitted, "I was very sure about my choice, and we never tried to turn our marriage into something performative. Maybe that's why nobody ever writes about us. I'm grateful for that. People probably think we're boring. Well, maybe we are." What they protected wasn't fame, it was family. Michelle and David refused to let their children be photographed without consent, kept media appearances to a minimum, and actively opposed magazines that tried to distinguish between biological and adopted children. "We love them both equally," she said, "and it's disappointing when people try to do otherwise." Claudia Rose, the daughter they raised together before their relationship was even 3 months old, grew up quietly but remarkably. She didn't pursue acting. Instead, she studied Slavic languages and literatures, earning a BA from Princeton, 2015, a Master of Arts, 2019, and a Master of Philosophy, 2021, from Columbia, where she later became a lecturer. Claudia keeps no public social media and rarely appears with her mother, except for one occasion when Michelle posted a photo of them on Instagram with the caption, "Hanging with my girlfriend." The moment moved fans, because everyone understood that was the kind of love that doesn't need proving. Nearly 3 decades together, they've held firm to one rule: never work together. "I've seen couples with great marriages who make one film together, and by next year they're filing for divorce," Michelle once said. Though David is a renowned writer and Michelle a top actress, they've never collaborated on any project. Each gives the other space, a quiet, unwavering professional respect. And no matter how packed their schedules, Saturday nights are always reserved for each other. It's a pact they made when Claudia was still a child. One dinner, one movie, one weekend date that's lasted 29 years. Michelle joked, "We were sleep-deprived from the baby, but we still rushed out for date night." She believes in luck. "I chose David really well. I'm incredibly lucky. I've never met anyone with more integrity than my husband. He's funny, smart, and very sweet. But the most important thing is that I respect him. If you don't respect your partner, you'll end up sick of them." Not every Hollywood love story needs a scandal to be special. Sometimes what makes a relationship unforgettable is that it's peaceful in a way that's truly rare. However, not every shadowed corner of Michelle Pfeiffer's personal life passed by peacefully. Back in 1989, when Warner Brothers was casting for the blockbuster Batman, Michelle was considered for the lead female role of Vicky Vale, a major opportunity at the time. But behind the scenes, things didn't go as smoothly as they looked on paper. Michael Keaton, cast as Bruce Wayne, flatly refused to be paired with Michelle. The reason? The two had recently broken up after a period of dating. According to actor Robert Wool, who played journalist Alexander Knox, Keaton was still trying to reconcile with his ex-wife at the time and was strongly opposed to Pfeiffer being cast in the lead role. An argument between Keaton and producer John Peters reportedly broke out on set. In the end, the role went to Kim Basinger, and Michelle Pfeiffer was vetoed right from the casting stage. It seemed like the story ended there. But 3 years later, Michelle came back, this time in Batman Returns, not only co-starring with Keaton, but as Catwoman, one of the most seductive and daring characters of the 1990s. Ironically, the woman once cast aside for being an ex-lover returned to lick Batman's face on the big screen. Many viewers thought Hollywood worked in strange ways, but for Michelle, it was just another part of the job. Later, when asked what advice he'd give to a young actor working with an ex, Michael Keaton simply said, "Be professional. Be grown up." Nearly 3 decades later, Michelle's name resurfaced, not because of a co-star, but because of another name closely linked to her husband, Nicole Kidman. In 2020, when The Undoing, a psychological thriller starring Nicole Kidman and Hugh Grant, became a global sensation, media attention quickly turned toward the woman behind the curtain, Michelle Pfeiffer. Her husband, renowned writer-producer David E. Kelley, was the creator of the series. And the woman cast in the lead wasn't Michelle, but Nicole Kidman. According to a source quoted by New Idea, Michelle wasn't exactly comfortable watching David and Nicole work so closely, calling frequently, and spending hours discussing the script. David called Nicole so often that Michelle began to feel like the third wheel in her own marriage, the source revealed. She had to set some ground rules, just to remind him who should come first. Speculation intensified when it emerged that Michelle hadn't even been considered for any role in the project. Some critics found it hard to believe. She may not have an Oscar, one source noted, but her skills are second to none. As for Michelle, she never spoke publicly. She remained silent, as she always had in the noisy world of showbiz. But that silence didn't stop the public from asking questions. Was there an invisible fracture when two powerful, radiant women, both navigating midlife in an industry relentlessly harsh toward aging actresses, found themselves implicitly compared through the man they both worked with most closely? Michelle never responded, and perhaps that's what makes people all the more curious. If it were you, could you stay as composed as Michelle Pfeiffer, watching your husband collaborate intimately with another Hollywood icon? Let us know in the comments, because this isn't just a celebrity story. Michelle Pfeiffer has never been loud. In nearly 5 decades of working, she's never used social media to craft an image, never needed scandal to stay relevant. But it's precisely that quiet presence that has made her one of the most unique figures in Hollywood. In 1990, People magazine chose her as the first ever cover star of their 50 Most Beautiful People in the World issue. Over the next decade, she would appear on that list 6 times, more than most of her contemporaries. An independent study on golden ratio facial proportions also ranked her among the most structurally perfect faces by classical aesthetic standards. Yet Pfeiffer never leaned on her beauty. She became known for her meticulousness, always preparing thoroughly for every scene, constantly working to refine her craft, and notably, never watching her own performances. For her, acting was something to be done fully on set, not something to dwell on or dissect afterward. Within the industry, Michelle has often been regarded as a character actress, someone drawn to deep, complex roles, but paradoxically limited by her striking appearance. That contradiction made her an anomaly, both a sex symbol and a serious actress, earning 3 Oscar nominations without ever playing by commercial formulas. Michelle Pfeiffer's name has even found surprising places in pop culture. In 2014, she was name-dropped in both Uptown Funk and Riptide. In cricket, the term "a Michelle" is jokingly used when a bowler takes 5 wickets, playing off 5 fur, a clever nod to her name. It's proof her influence extends far beyond film, touching unexpected corners of the cultural landscape. She hasn't racked up a long list of major awards, and she's not the most easily branded star. But Michelle Pfeiffer has carved out a space of her own, enduring, irreplaceable, in the history of modern cinema. At 66, Michelle Pfeiffer isn't living off past glory. After years of selective roles and a low-profile lifestyle, she made a stunning comeback starting in 2017, with a string of performances critics couldn't ignore. The dignity-stripped woman in Where is Kira, Ruth Madoff in The Wizard of Lies, which earned her both Emmy and Golden Globe nominations, and standout roles in Mother, Murder on the Orient Express, and French Exit, the latter bringing her the 8th Golden Globe nod of her career. Michelle officially entered the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU, as Janet Van Dyne, the original Wasp, in Ant-Man and the Wasp, 2018, and Quantumania, 2023, proving her enduring appeal across generations of moviegoers. Off-screen, Pfeiffer maintains a deeply introspective life. She's been a lifelong oil painter. Painting isn't just a hobby, but a healing practice, quiet and profound. Pfeiffer once described it as a form of meditation, a place where she doesn't have to perform anything, just colors and emotion remain. But her artistic life doesn't end with painting. Michelle also ventured into business with a trailblazing spirit. In 2019, she launched Henry Rose, a clean fragrance brand that became the first in the world to earn dual certification from the Environmental Working Group and Cradle to Cradle, guaranteeing the highest standards of health and sustainability. Henry Rose is more than a product. It's a personal manifesto, transparent, safe, elegant, and ethical, just like the way she has existed in Hollywood for nearly 50 years. As 2024 to 2025 unfolds, Michelle Pfeiffer isn't merely returning, she's evolving. She recently signed on to star in and co-produce The Madison, a new chapter in the Yellowstone universe created by Taylor Sheridan. The project marks a new phase. Michelle is no longer just acting, she's creatively shaping what she's part of. Simultaneously, she takes on the role of Cheyenne Millett in Apple TV Plus's upcoming series, Margot's Got Money Troubles, starring alongside Elle Fanning and Nicole Kidman in her first-ever collaboration with her husband, David E. Kelley. Also in 2024, Michelle appears in Amazon MGM's holiday comedy Oh, What Fun, playing Claire Closter, a mother who vanishes just in time for Christmas, a role that's humorous, surprising, and full of heart. And in summer 2025, she steps into the spotlight again as the face of Saint Laurent, fronting a campaign creatively directed by Anthony Vaccarello. In the relentless current of Hollywood, Michelle Pfeiffer has chosen to move at her own rhythm, quiet, unflashy, but never out of touch. She once said, "I don't understand why the media doesn't write more about us. Maybe because we're boring. And honestly, that's something I'm grateful for." Michelle Pfeiffer never sought the spotlight, yet through talent, strength, and a quietly fulfilled personal life, she carved her name into the history of cinema. From underestimated roles to the immortal Catwoman, from a silent mother to a pioneering entrepreneur, her journey proves one truth: you don't need noise to become a legend. Pfeiffer is the embodiment of enduring beauty, intelligence, and self-possession. In a Hollywood that constantly shifts, she has preserved one thing: integrity. Which era of Michelle Pfeiffer's nearly 50-year journey impressed you the most? Leave a comment and share this video to spread the inspiration of a star that never fades. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next stories. We have many more extraordinary stories waiting for you.